lot of improvement from the northern hemisphere sides.
That's cute.
Yeah,
That's cute. We're getting better.
And now can we have the truth, please?
Because I remember going into the final, I think I actually made it into Chasing the Sun's documentary where I'm sat there saying, England already have one hand on the trophy.
Oops.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how, the fire came about. And then there was, the songs would sing again.
How did they go?
It's always on fire.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Perfect pitch.
That was surprising.
That's your Japanese karaoke. Welcome to the official Rugby World Cup podcast brought to you by Asahi Super Dry. I'm Gethin Jones, I am your host, and I'm delighted to say we are joined by some of the superstars of the game of rugby. We have two previous World Cup winners in Australia's George Gregan and Springbok Tendai Mtawarira, also known as the Beast. 7 World Cups between you, 256 caps. Yeah, and then there's Hugo Monye. I think the closest you came to a World Cup was 2011 when I think you just blocked out the diary, and then unfortunately the call didn't come.
This is the closest I've been to a World Cup.
I can't believe it's here.
It's pretty cool.
It's because it's been following the Beast around for the last week. It's like you've been having a relationship with this thing.
Pretty crazy. And I've spent quite a bit of time with the World Cup. I was, bestowed the honor of traveling with it from Dubai to Paris. So I can tell you, we have spent some beautiful times together. Yeah, it feels like 2019 all over.
Yeah, I bet. Can I just say, welcome to Paris. Bienvenue. Bienvenue. Actually, I did GCSE French. I got cat, dog, hello, and that's about it. How are you doing with your French?
What? Say that again.
Always needs work.
George is fluent.
No,
you're
fluent.
decent. You've been on the app today.
Doing my numbers, making sure my 17-day streak's still there.
Very good.
Yeah, 9 minutes a day, give or take.
How's your French, Hughes, Tendai?
C'est pas mal.
Oh, go on.
Parlez-vous français?
Oh, yeah.
Oui.
I get better the more Asahis I drink. That's how it works. Here we are in Paris, like memories of playing rugby in Paris, lads. I mean, your last international game was Marseille, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Marseille in what was the old Velodrome. I believe they've updated that. And that was not such a great day at the office for us against England on a day which is hot like this. So it was perfect conditions. But played Paris. I think we were one of the first rugby matches there after the French team won the 1998 Football World Cup there with Zinedine Zidane.
Yeah.
We played there in November, and it's an amazing stadium. So it was state of the art then. It still looks pretty good when we drove, or didn't drive past it. We went past on our
limo box. Very exciting,
Evo
weren't
box.
they?
Yeah, it was really
We're
quick.
amazed we're here, to be honest.
We're still here.
Yeah.
Got both hands,
Yeah.
both legs. Very happy.
Saw it in a different light. Hugo's got a brilliant stat about playing rugby in Paris, haven't you, Hugo? Big yourself up, pal.
Well, I mean, it's not bigging myself up.
Yes, you are. You're about to big yourself
I'm in the
up.
company of greatness, but Gethin was
Thank you.
asking, have I played in
Oh, not
Paris?
me.
And I said, yeah, I've played a few games in Paris. I've never lost in Paris, but, that's not at a World Cup stage. But I do want to pick up on what you mentioned there. The French football team winning the World Cup in '98. And we've got the Arc de Triomphe just behind us. And I remember they blew it up and put Zidane's image onto it. And they had 1 million people on the Champs-Elysees.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I just thought that is so cool. So now we're not that far away from the World Cup. Whoever wins that World Cup, I just hope that plays a significant role into it.
Yeah. It's bound
very,
to.
very special. Iconic.
I mean, the World Cup, it's been dominated by Southern Hemisphere, isn't it, Tendai, for a long time, as you and George well know. Are the tides turning slightly at the moment? Do you think that the Northern Hemisphere teams, it seems a bit more competitive than it's ever been?
I think so. Yeah, I think the tide has definitely changed. I've seen a lot of improvement from the northern hemisphere sides.
That's cute.
Yeah,
That's cute. We're getting better.
And now can we have the truth, please?
I know, specifically Ireland, France. I don't know about England though. But,
Mate, can you give him another beer? Let's get the truth out of him.
So he's retired now. He's actually speaking a little bit more openly. He's not staying on that tight script.
Yeah, but exactly. I'm veering off a little bit, and speaking my mind, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the Northern Hemisphere is much better, and I certainly hope South Africa, they're going to win the fourth one. But if not, I'm back in the fringe to possibly win on home soil.
Only New Zealand have defended it, haven't they? So it's a tough ask to do it 4 years on. But going back, last time the World Cup was here, 2007, I think Ireland were the highest placed Northern Hemisphere team, fifth. It's completely different now. Ireland are number one.
Yeah. Well, number one and number two, the hosts are number two, they're number one. And the Six Nations game, I was lucky enough to call that earlier this year, and the first 40 minutes of that match was probably the best rugby I've seen in over a decade. It was like stunning. So they're well and truly, I think, the pace setters at the moment. And I think Ireland are going to be going into this World Cup with form. They've done this before, 2019, and it didn't go to plan. But I think, from what I've seen, carrying on from what Tendai was saying, I honestly think they're going to be really, really tough to beat. And if they get over that hurdle, and it is a mental hurdle, a quarter-final, they haven't got past that. If they get over that...
Can we talk about the mental hurdle? Because I've heard this before, Ireland are the form team. We knew what happened to Leinster in Europe. And exactly. But Ireland have never done it. Can they do it?
Yeah, they can. I think they're better equipped now than they ever have been. Let's not forget, in 2018, they were the number one team in the world. Joe Schmidt was voted as the coach of the year, Johnny Sexton player of the year, and then a year on they went to Japan and they got to quarterfinal and couldn't get over that hurdle. I think Andy Farrell coming in and breathing new light, having learnt the lessons, and you've got to remember that in sport, through all your losses, you can turn them into lessons if you don't ever repeat that again. So they won't want to be in that place, but on the kind of balance of power, I mean, it's been 20 years since we've had a Northern Hemisphere team win the thing, right?
Who won it then? They didn't mention it.
03, the guys are still rinsing corporate scene from it.
Even Neil Bax doing stuff.
Just wheeling them out, do you know what I mean? So, but, as George just said there, number one, number two, being up in Northern Hemisphere, it's amazing, but I do also think we live in this closed society because the Six Nations, the Rugby Championship, are displaced. We see brilliant rugby like Ireland against France, and we get mega excited. You look at the world rankings. But once the Rugby Championship starts, then I feel as if we'll have a broader picture of where the balance of power is, because South Africa will take on New Zealand, or Australia will slap someone in the face, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember they're actually, they're the world champions. Australia really good. New Zealand, let's not forget about them. So, I don't know, I always wonder what the Southern Hemisphere views the Northern Hemisphere.
Oh, go on.
No, we respect you. We respect the
Give him another beer.
You can't say it and laugh in my face.
He's got a script in front of him. He's just got one line.
He first started by saying they're getting better, and then we respect you.
No, we do. Some of my toughest test matches have been in the Northern Hemisphere, specifically against Ireland, against the French and Ireland. So I really think that, just to back on, what you're saying, Hugo, I believe that Ireland have learned from their lessons. Everybody, has been speaking about them, always choking at the World Cup, so I'm sure it's going to play a key role in motivating them, to go on and really perform. And I think Andy Farrell has been a special coach, has brought in something new and different. So the way they're playing right now, I don't see them, not, getting knocked out, come playoff time. I think they'll go all the way.
Which team in the Northern Hemisphere wouldn't you want to play against right now?
France definitely. Outside of 1 and 2, which is obvious because of the rankings, we haven't mentioned them around the table yet.
Wales.
No, not Wales. Wales, like as great as Warren Gatland is,
You need to put your beer away.
But I think
you put shades on.
I think Scotland. I don't think anyone wants to play Scotland on any day.
Ooh.
I think they're a team which can put 30+ points against whoever they play if they get it right.
True.
They're under the radar in that pool of death, and no one's talking about them. Everyone, and they might just turn up and do what was done to them in Japan, and there'll be a lot of players who are part of that, who want to have another crack at getting into the deeper part of the tournament, and they have the skills and they have the ability to do it. I know they've had, but it's one of the games the Wallabies in the last probably good decade have really struggled with, because they turn up and they make things uncomfortable. They play a little bit differently, and I think they're a team which is we use the expression of banana skin, like it's a really slippery game. To
It's
me,
not
that's
an,
one.
It's not an Aussie saying, George. We
Yeah.
all say banana skin.
Yeah,
Like, it's
well,
not, you can't just claim that as your...
We see more bananas than over here. We grow them.
But if Scotland don't make it out of their group, I think they'll have such a big bearing. Let's just say Ireland, South Africa make it out of their group, get to quarterfinals. I think they're in a powerful position because there is one side of the draw which is just undeniably slightly harder than the other.
Yeah.
So whoever finishes first and second, Scotland are going to have a huge bearing on that because they could beat South Africa, they could beat Ireland.
Yeah.
And that could mean that their course and their route to a potential final could be made infinitely more difficult by what Scotland do. Because you're right, they have the capacity. They got Finn Russell at fly half, who I think he's the most talented, naturally talented fly half on the planet.
Yeah.
I really do. He
You've always
sees
said
things
that, yeah.
With fast ball, he just
Imagine on a day like today.
fast ball.
he's
Probably one of the
dangerous.
best decision makers, with that number on his back, because he's really comfortable, and the players around him, I think, and he's picked his moments too. It's not always about the big play. When he injects himself, he really he makes it difficult. If you're coaching against Scotland, they're just dangerous.
Finn Russell on a hot day, that's a lot of sun cream,
Well,
isn't it?
Finn
Like
lives
today.
here.
Yeah, of course he does.
He's more accustomed to this weather, this style of play.
Yes.
He understands it.
That's
and there's,
true, yeah.
There's a big part of it as well, which we've not touched upon, is just the culture, the environment, the expectation. Like, he's immersed himself in French rugby for the last few years. He's already played his last few matches for Paris. He's moving over to England. But you mentioned France, like straight off the bat,
Yeah.
Northern Hemisphere team. What is it about their team that would make you feel uncomfortable if you had to play against them?
The full pack.
They're
I
massive,
think
aren't they?
They're massive. I think, they just, can dismantle any other four pack on any given day. So I think, the matchup we had with them again in Marseille last year, I think, that was a proper battle. But I think, they were missing Paul Willemse. They were missing a couple of key guys. So I think, with a full strength team, they can really give a team like South Africa a tough time. So they're the only team I'd say they can match us up front, come scrum time and, driving mauls and line out time. So that's why I picked
And
them.
the
Plus they
Jouet too.
Yeah, plus they can beat you with footwork around the big men have good feet
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
contact. They just don't go route one the whole time. They've got footwork and they can get their hands free and pop and play out the back.
Decent
They're a
scrum half.
dangerous team.
Decent scrum
Yeah,
half.
well,
Right.
we haven't even spoken about
No,
DuPont yet.
yeah.
We're that far into it.
We've got
but
so
how
much
good-
to cover.
how
You
good
just
is he?
talked about culture there, and you're talking about Ireland getting there. How do they get over that quarter-final stage if they haven't done it before? This comes down to leadership and coaching. There's some really interesting characters that you guys know really well from the South African and Australian side. Eddie Jones. You've been following him loads, obviously, through England. He knows how to get a team deep into a World Cup, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's really good at it. Like his record speaks for itself in terms of that. Be it in Australia, when he was assistant coach with the Springboks with Jake White and the team, Victor and John Smith and that gang, which won here 2007.
Yeah.
They speak so highly of him and Farid Dupria, like an amazing team. Not that there's ever a bad Springbok team. It's like there's never a really bad All Black team. There's just levels of great that go up when they respond to these types of events. And obviously what he did with Japan, where they actually knocked off. I was there that day at Brighton.
Gloucester. Oh, Brighton, yeah.
In Brighton.
Was
That was
there-
a
was
great
there in
day.
my life.
That was a great day.
That was amazing.
But he
on my leg.
prepared that team, the story, and I know that he prepared that. He was preparing for that day, like hundreds of days out, and so he's kind of got that level about him, Eddie. And so these tournaments set up really, really well. Like we haven't mentioned another one who's good at tournament play, Michael Cheika, who's looking after Argentina. He gets them ready for this sort of rugby and this type of football really well. So I think there's that piece where you get to a point, and we've spoken about it. The tournament, you've got to get through your pool stage, so wherever you fit on what side of the equation. But then if you get to the top 8, doesn't matter where you are. Like, you've got to turn up on the day and get it done. Find a way to get it done. And what you've done previously, be it earlier in the tournament, what you've done previously in the last year or two, it could help to a degree, but it's got to help you on that day. What are you doing that day? And I think that's the piece which is, so it's there. It's there for you to take, or it's there for you to sort of pack your bags and go home.
Yeah.
That's the reality of a quarter final. And then you got a bit of breathing space. You've got another 2 weeks. You want to play third or fourth. You want to play in the final, but that's the nature of that quarter final. So you've got to be ready
He
for
knows
it.
how to do
Yeah.
that, yeah. He's interesting as well, isn't he? Because, I don't know, as a rugby fan, I love watching him in the media, because I'm sure you have as well over the last year. And also, on the same level, Rassie Erasmus, we watched Chasing the Sun, the documentary. Fascinating insight into his mind. I watched it and I'm still not sure what he's about. What is he about?
Rassie is a disruptor. He's the kind of guy who comes in the environment and he kind of shakes the tree, and that's what he did with the Springboks. When things were going pear-shaped in 2016 and 2017, you had that outside-in kind of look because he was based in Ireland at the time, and then he saw all these things that were not going well, beyond the field of play, our structures and the alignment of South African franchises, to help the Springboks be successful. So he's very intelligent in his approach. He's very good at analyzing other teams, opposition. So before we faced any opposition in the World Cup, we knew exactly what they were going to bring. So he's very good at thinking ahead. And with that Chasing the Sun, I'll tell you, that idea was birthed by him. And it was all about showing the authenticity and uniqueness of the Springbok team. And, the stories, telling the stories within the team. And, he said that we were not going to, go out there and act and pretend that we're people that we're not. So that's why it's so raw. It's exactly how it was, in the build-up to win that World Cup. So I highly respect the guy. He's achieved so much. And, yes, I know he's got his rants in the media. Sometimes he does things that you wouldn't expect of him.
When he's doing that, you with players going, oh, not again, Rassie.
I think some of the boys might have reacted that way because it mainly happened after I retired. But I guess, he just likes to, go against the grain a little bit just to shake the tree, as I said, make people feel uncomfortable. But, he just, he thinks in a different way, in his approaches.
But the public perception of him versus him in the changing room, how connected are they, or what is the disparity in the personalities that we see, enjoy, try and dissect and scratch our minds of versus the one so personally well?
No, I think there's definitely a connection in what you see in the public and how he is, with the team. He's always been the kind of guy who just doesn't accept things as they are. If he sees something that is wrong and he doesn't agree with it, he's going to speak out.
Yeah.
So even in the team environment, for instance, before he came, I don't think the Springbok team had addressed some of the stuff that, we used to struggle with our culture, because it didn't really embrace or show the diversity of the landscape of South Africa. So he was very good at, kind of speaking about the elephant in the room, and he does that in the media. So he addresses stuff with the referees. So I think, it might obviously make a few people uncomfortable, but in the end, I think the end goal is kind of, achieved. And
he got his Instagram.
Yeah, he did. Game one of the World Cup in Japan 2019, you take on the All Blacks. Everyone around the world, eyes are focused on that game. It's huge, absolutely massive. And everyone knows the history of the World Cup. There's never been a team to win a World Cup that's lost a game in it. You lose your opening game. What were the conversations that you had around that? Because in order for you to achieve what you wanted to achieve, you had to do something that no other team had done previously.
And just on top of that, it's history repeating itself with France, isn't it? Home nation against New Zealand as well.
Yeah, it's crazy because, the change room was quiet, and I remember I actually came off the bench for that game, and I played 20 minutes. Stephen Kitts started, and we made little errors that costed us the game in the end. And we went back in the change room. Everybody was quiet. The players literally had doubt in their faith. I had doubt in my face. Like, are we really gonna be able to come back from this? Because we focused for the last 2 years on this specific game. We'll be running drills at practice, saying, "Oh, New Zealand are gonna be, doing this, and we're gonna react this way." And to get there and and have that disappointment, it kind of weighed heavy on us. But there was one man in that change room that was positive, and it was Rassie. And he straight up said, "I promise you, we made a couple of areas. I'll show you the footage. I'll show you the, on the big screen, and you'll see that we actually didn't play badly. We just made 2 areas or 3 areas that costed us in the end, and we can fix those and go on to win this World Cup. And it just kind of.
Did you believe him?
I believed him. And I think it obviously took a little bit of time. Obviously you think he's just trying to be positive, but when you showed the footage on the screen and you saw it, I think there was one missed tackle by my Pimpi on Sivu Reese, and then he managed to break the line and ran like 40 minutes down the line and then passed it to Richie Moonga and he scored. So there were things that, little areas that we did, but the rest of the game, our defense was solid. And he was like, we got to just patch that up, we got to fix that and have that positive attitude. And everything starts now. I think it was Namibia the next game. And then, our mindset was like, it's one game at a time. And he was instrumental in getting us back,
and then momentum starts building.
Yeah.
That's small margins, isn't it?
Well, it is. Like, it's funny you're saying that. Like, we've all had those sort of days at the office, particularly against the All Blacks in New Zealand when they're in that mindset. Like, you make a small error and it can really exacerbate and look really bad. And then when you review it, we weren't that far off.
Yeah.
And when you have that ability to then reflect and say, okay, let's learn, let's move forward, and it's just another chance to keep going. That's kind of what you did. But if he doesn't correct that and doesn't point that out to the team, then there is doubt. And once doubt soups in, it's no good.
There's no doubt. I think Sir Alex Ferguson once said, didn't he?
There wasn't any doubt going into the World Cup final. We know what happened in that game. Great day. Can I take you back to the day or the night before? Because I heard a real interesting story, because I think you sometimes forget when Greaves is playing for Australia, you're playing for South Africa, you're playing against 15 men, or scored a 23, but you're actually facing against the country. And with every country, there's a history attached to it. And you have to lean into those stories to get yourself a psychological edge. And Rassie Erasmus apparently did this the night before, because the history of England and South Africa is quite a colourful and fractured one. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but did he offer a video, a DVD, some footage about taking us back into the history of South Africa and England? Is that your eyes are right?
No.
Do you know what I'm leading you to?
Sort of, but, I choose the. Can I plead the fifth?
Snake it.
I've never seen the beast. It's so nervous.
That's why I didn't want to. Hey, if you want to reveal, then you can reveal. But in terms of getting your players and your team psychologically sharp and understand
so well right now, Hugo. I'm so proud of you. Keep going.
Who they're playing against and what they stand for and the history of it, then I think he achieved that from what he showed to.
You know what? It wasn't. It's not like he was bad mouthing England or speaking ill about their history, but he kind of just highlighted the difference in our stories. I'll tell you, for instance, I was born in Zimbabwe and, I had to go on this really tough journey to get to the top and play for, South Africa and represent a different country. And, and it wasn't easy. So he kind of like made us tip into that, and my Pimpi, he lost his whole family. So he used those stories to
on the shirts, wasn't it?
Yeah, on the
shirts.
Yeah,
Can
my
you
Pimpi shirts.
Explain that? It's very
it was
powerful.
sad. It was really sad because we were. I'll tell you straight up, the players were making jokes because my Pimpi, and then the rest of the players were asked for pictures of your family members so they could put them on the back of your jersey. And
on
my
the
Pimpi,
numbers, wasn't it?
on the numbers. And my Pimpi just handed in his pictures. Yeah. So I think just his picture, and he said you can just obviously make a couple of copies of it and put it on the back of my jersey. And the boys were saying, he probably loves himself. And even Rassie was thinking the same thing, and he asked in the team meeting, like, my Pimpi, I heard that you only handed in your own picture, but nobody else. And then my Pimpi just straight up said, I don't have anyone else. Yeah. Man, I promise you could have heard a pin drop in that room, like, it just hit home. Like, this dude doesn't have anyone. He just has his grandma. And, like, it was it really like a sad moment. But the guy is so positive, he just carries himself so well. and he just wants to do well for the country. So he tapped into those stories, those little stories, see his journey, and that's what kind of brought us to that moment where we just, were able to be the best vision of ourselves on that field.
I was just going to say, what you develop there is a bond that's so tight. That's talked about loads in the game of rugby, isn't it? And here we are, you guys sipping an Asahi in the Parisian sun with the World Cup around the corner. Just on that topic in terms of friendships and relationships, has there been anyone after a game that you've shared a beer with in the change room that's surprised you maybe based on what you knew from them before facing them? Like, did you have a beer with Johnny Wilkinson after the 2003?
I don't think anyone had a beer with Johnny Wilkinson. I had a glass of wine in 2015 with him and Phil Kearns. It was really nice, actually. And he came over, he sort of dressed like he was in disguise around Trafalgar Square. But it was really, really nice to do that because we actually hadn't had a drink with him in terms of 2003. Right? Mind you, a few of the English boys, like not so much Tins, had a few Tins over the years, but
he's still in Trafalgar Square. Then finishing off.
But with that in mind, I think like he was at my 50th. I had a great celebration in Tassie with a group of great friends and family friends when I went back to Oz a few weeks ago. But probably under 19s, and we've got a strong friendship. It's still Justin Marshall. Like we was really surprised. Like we're obviously 19. We all think we're bulletproof and Aussies versus Kiwis. But then after the game, we had beers. We played some drinking games, obviously, and we just hit it off. So we were super, super competitive, but very, very much alike. And we've sort of been just great mates right through our lives. So I think that's not uncommon in rugby. I think I was lucky enough, and then I'm going to pass the ball on to you guys, but did a north-south game after the Banda Aceh tsunami. So I was with Victor, John Smith, Big Skulky Burger, and all the guys.
Big
we
enemies.
played. Enemies, like we'd just been playing against each other. Like it was always going to rip the bits out of you. We wanted to kill you, George, and vice versa. Saying, then all of a sudden we're playing together. Had the best week. Like a Barbars week, the best week together, and our friendship is like to this day is like just stronger and stronger. So I think that's what's beautiful about rugby, and long may it continue.
I think the people you perhaps dislike the most on the pitch are probably your toughest competitors. One, because if you're really good at what you do, it probably gives you a bit more of a voice, which allows you to be able to just give a bit more banter or abuse on the pitch. But they're perhaps the people that you actually respect the most. Like I played against Ronan Nagar on a number of occasions. Oh my word, he would commentate right throughout the game. And he was really good, so I felt mentally I had to be absolutely switched on in every single moment because he could put the ball in behind me, he can put the ball through the hands across me, he can make me look silly, and he'd also commentate and let you know if you've made a mistake or the rest of it. And then toured with the Lions actually in 2009, and he's a player, what's that, 14 years ago, I still stay in touch with like today. He's just an extremely good human being, but to think that I would ever feel like that playing against him is probably not a thought I'd ever have.
These are brilliant. I love the fact that Eddie Jones now likes Alan Wynne Jones after spending a week with him at the Barbars when he spent 10 years moaning about him and how he is with the ref.
He's not the only one.
The Beast, go on, finish us off.
Okay, for me, it would be Owen Franks from the All Blacks. He was probably the guy that gave me a Tory time on the park, and exactly like Ugo, he was a guy that, I probably scrummed against whether I put on a Sharks jersey or a Springbok jersey. And we consistently, we're going for each other. And, after the game, it would be like, almost like we don't want to shake hands or, there's all this tension, this animosity. But eventually, I decided to, take the leap of faith. And I think it was after a big loss in somewhere in New Zealand, and the guy turned out to be one of the nicest guys, and he was telling me about his family, and in a special memory, back in 2012 when I played my 100th game for the Sharks when we won in Christchurch. He presented to me a Crusaders jersey with my name on it and with a number of caps. I'd play, with 100 caps, and then just saying, congratulations, and gave this wonderful speech about me. I couldn't believe it, man. So just shows that rugby, breaks down these borders, or you know,
Respect.
there's respect and camaraderie, which is really special.
Where's the shirt now? Where have you put the shirt?
I've got it. It's actually in my special memorabilia room, so I've got it. You know.
How's your memorabilia room coming along, Hughes? Any good?
I've got a nice memorabilia.
Have you?
room. Do you know what? But in my memorabilia
Everyone
room,
else's stash that you bought in
everyone
auctions.
else's. I've just bought at dinners and stuff. But I've got jerseys which mean a lot, but I've also got painful jerseys because the life of any elite sports person isn't always plain sailing. Like, we kind of consume just highlights of people's careers, so you just get known for the special things that you do, but that's not life. And so I've got a couple of jerseys up there where I had some painful experience, individually as a team, just to remind you of that. But on that story of Owen Frank, the first time I met your captain, Sia Khaleesi, was actually after the World Cup final. A few weeks later, he travelled to Liverpool. He's a massive Liverpool fan, right? Yeah. And we texted a little bit. I knew he was at the game, so I met him, and then we ended up coming back to the hotel for a beer and just chatting to him, and went up to him, and he was slightly nervous. He was like, are we good? I was like, yeah, we're cool. So he flew in, came into Heathrow, and he thought that the English public would hate him because they just beat England, dismantled them to win a World Cup. And I was like, bro, everyone's got to understand your story, and you're really loved here. But that sense of humility where you've sacrificed your life to achieve this one thing, and you still have that humility to go, I know we've inflicted pain here, and that's even part of your consciousness, I found was actually remarkable. But spending a couple of hours with him, I had a few beers, because I remember going into the final, I think I actually made it into Chasing the Sun's documentary, where I'm sat there saying, England already have one hand on the trophy. Oops. Yeah, exactly. No, I was just so confident after All Blacks game.
Do you want to go again now? Can we put it on record?
No, absolutely not. No. But then sitting with him having a couple of beers, and then when you start hearing some of those personal stories about the Mapimpies and the psychology and emotion that goes into it, I honestly came away from that evening thinking, we actually never had a chance of winning it. We had never had a chance, because sport is sport, and by the way, being desperate to win is an advantage because the opposition are equally as desperate.
Yeah.
And when there's something deep rooted into your connection to what winning is, that's really powerful.
And I've never known a Springbok team to be told they're no good the week of any match, particularly World Cup final, and not have some sort of crazy response. And it's just one of the, like, them, the All Blacks, well, I say they're probably the standout teams for me. And I think, well, they didn't lose too many during my period, that Martin Johnson period. They had a level that you could go to when it came to those big matches. And if you doubt them at your own peril, that was that's who they are. And it's a big part of the mindset of South Africans in all sports. They love it.
So we got some questions in from World Rugby, knowing that we had three legends on today's
True,
episode.
I've just won a competition.
Just here for the beer. Yeah, we're good. The Beast. This came in. Can you remember the birth of the Bomb Squad and how it all came about? The Bomb Squad.
Yeah, I actually do. It was at the World Cup, and I think at the time Rassie was having a difficult time on picking his starters, because as you know we had guys on the bench that were equally as good as the guys that were starting. So for instance, the front row, So in the end, I think the term just came up in a meeting. It's like, when you come on the field, you gotta, blast off, and it's a bomb. You gotta, make an impact. And then all of a sudden, everybody just started calling the impact players the Bomb Squad, and then obviously the media caught onto it, and then the rest of the world, and it became such a big part of what we're doing on the fields. So it kind of resembled our depth in a way.
And in that Bomb Squad, when we look at the subs that you got in the front row, the individuals all have slightly different nicknames, which all contribute to that Bomb Squad. Can you share that with us?
They had Gladiator names, didn't they? Like, Gladiator.
Going in deep, man. Because I think we still want to use some of these secret code names, come this World Cup. So I might just get in trouble for oversharing.
Oh, they were code names.
Yeah, no, but the thing is, Kitsov is, the reason why they'll call him the Fire is because obviously he's got the red hair. So when he comes on,
that Steve?
he's
Yeah,
on
nice.
fire.
Yeah, yeah.
Stephen Kitsoff.
Everyone gets that.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense, yeah.
pretty much that's how like the fire came about, and then there was like the songs would sing, after a game.
How did they go?
Kitsoff is on fire.
Oh yeah, look at that! What perfect pitch.
That was surprising.
That's your Japanese karaoke. You did some karaoke nights bonding too. I know you did. You're in Shinjuku. I heard that. Looked like some. I heard
good.
about this.
So
No.
we hear that down the Champs-Elysees.
No, I'm not a good singer.
Did anyone have a bad name which they didn't like? I'm showing my age here, but it's the whole Quentin Tarantino where it's like Mr. Pink. I don't like being Mr. Pink. Like Steve Buscemi, you didn't want to be Mr. Pink. I don't want to be Mr. Pink. Like, were they happy with their name, or there was a little bit of? And obviously, if they didn't like their name, it's going to stick. But was there any of that?
Yeah. Are you talking about this? That was the team that I was part of, like the 2019 team?
2019.
Not necessarily, but before that, I can recall a time when I played with Ruan Pina, and he was nicknamed Mr. Bean. Because he kind of looked like Mr. Bean, and he used to go mad if you called him that. So,
Red back to a bull.
I can't even see that now.
Don't call him Mr. Bean, otherwise he might just punch you.
Turns into Hulk.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's others that I won't mention because I know I'll get in trouble.
Come on, just one.
You got
I'm
fired.
gonna get in trouble. Okay, forgive me.
You just threw it back under the bus. Throw it forward under
Come on,
the bus.
who are we
Yeah,
forgiving?
please don't kill me
don't
when
mess.
you see me.
Don't mess with him.
He will.
Go on, what's his nickname?
No, it's not his nickname.
Oh,
man, this is gonna get me in trouble.
No, come on. Have a beer.
I know he'll be upset. I know he'll be upset with me.
it's not as good as the Beast, is it? The Beast has to
okay.
be the best nickname.
Nah, it's cool. I've been lucky,
We were
I've been
talking
lucky to have a nice nickname.
I'd call you
like the
Voice of the
Beast.
Angel.
because we were talking about it before. I was coached by Graham Rowntree, England coach at the time, and now Munster coach, and his nickname was Wig because he had no hair, and it's just it doesn't ping as well as Beast. Not when you play in the
No.
front row. You can get unfortunate with your nickname. Did you have any nicknames?
Some of the Welsh boys have some brilliant
Yeah,
nicknames.
a few,
don't they?
like he actually had a few. Like I was pretty basic ones. Gregs. Australians can be a little bit sort of not too imaginative. Throw an S on it or turn it into Jono or something like that. and then it was GG or Gov.
it's a
Governor
Y,
General, so
yeah.
Gov. So I had that.
Governor General.
Governor
That's
Governor General.
large.
Early doors in Canberra. That was my Canberra nickname.
Governor
So-
General, I've got a question
my
for you.
gosh.
There's another question for you. Gov.
Gov.
Can I call you Gov?
Yeah,
Have we got to that stage?
I feel we can. After today, we survived on a bike. We got our limbs. Happy for you to call me Gov.
Cheers, Gov. Hey, Gov, did Australia make the right call getting rid of René, as we call him in this part of France, and bringing Eddie in so close?
Yeah, I really feel for Dave Rennie because he's such a great coach, and he's won wherever he's gone, and he's a coach who gets his players clear on how they need to play, but the buzzword of culture / how they have to behave is really, really important. So he brings that togetherness, but professional sport's so tough. Like at that stage, I had that last week where the Wallabies were down to their last 25 players on that tour. I had a couple of days or a day with them in Cardiff, and they came from behind to beat Wales on that end of season tour game, which was amazing. And they pushed France. They lost by a point or two. They pushed Ireland at Aviva and lost by a couple of points. It came down to a kick. So I think and then they lost a poor result against Italy. So they lost 3 of those 5 games. That was probably the death knell for Dave because of performance. That's it. And it was no different to Eddie. I go back to 2005. Way back, and that's when we had a similar tour, but we'd had some poor results prior. And once they start talking about your winning record, and then what happened with Eddie, no one would have thought, like within 12 months, that he's gone from being the head coach, talking about preparing for 2023, and then he's not the English coach. There's just this sliding doors moment. So I see why Australian rugby moved, but I really did feel for Dave Rennie because he did an outstanding job. He's created a really good young group and depth for Eddie to hopefully develop and take to that next level of getting consistent and then starting to prepare and think like world champions or think like what does world class look like. But no, it's tough. Being a head coach in international rugby, it's a tough gig, and you need people to back you, and you need to have people to back you through as you
Well,
said,
they've
sports
done
not always
that with
winning.
Eddie now. He's signed what? There's 2 World Cups in there and a Lions. He's signed till 2027 or something. So they're obviously seeing the need to develop Australia.
He was signed till the end of this World Cup too with England as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, things change in
Things
sport. don't they?
change.
Unbelievable tournament coach, though. His record in tournaments is unbelievable. And it's tough because I think as every international coach, you're spinning 2 plates. You're trying to appease people and get ready today whilst preparing for tomorrow. And sometimes you get that balance wrong. So you might have too many young players in a squad whilst you're preparing for tomorrow whilst losing today. And so, I don't know, there's always context to results, and Dave Rennie will have real good reason for that. But anyone I've spoken to in the Australian camp who worked with him, he worked up in Glasgow, I've only ever heard positive things. And the heart of all of it is culture. So, I don't know. It's
sport is
it's
cruel,
a tough
isn't
one.
it?
Of course
It's
it is.
tough,
Yeah.
Hughes, who is your England bolter for the World Cup? And who will play 10? That last bit may have been added by me.
Okay. I'll start with your last question first. It'll be Owen Farrell. Owen Farrell will be England captain. He will be their 10. England obviously had a difficult year, but his performances has been brilliant. Won the Premiership for the first time as a captain, won his 6th Premiership title with Saracens. I think his performances and his outlook on the game, he almost feels freer. And the brand of rugby he's playing domestically just seems to be a little bit more open, which is something that England are going to need to do. So that's a fairly simple question for me to answer.
Yeah, no doubt in your mind.
No.
They'll take Forward and Smith, will they?
Well, it comes down to how many fly halves you want to take.
Right. But he's got to play 10 rather than the 10-12
Well,
business.
I could see, if Steve Borthwick was to select George Ford as well, I could see them also reverting back to that 10-12. We know it works. It's tough because in the World Cup, you're selecting 31 players. You've got to cut your cloth accordingly. I think he will take 3. If he takes 3, then it's fairly obvious as to who he selects. But the difference for us in the Northern Hemisphere versus playing a World Cup in Japan is if you need to bring someone into camp, it's a 2.5-hour train.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to acclimatise for a week, and people can get ready quite early.
Yeah.
My bolter,
Not like the Lions when they sent 4 Welshmen out. Do you remember that? That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, Shane Williams was on the pop, wasn't he, for a week, and the next thing he's got a cap in 2013 playing against the Brumbies. Do you know what I mean?
Round the corner.
Do you know what I mean?
You're around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I reckon the only reason he went on that tour and was on the piss for the week is just because he was just hoping. Like, who takes their boots on tour when you're on a
Shame.
flipping corporate trip, eh? The bolter, I think. I actually don't.
Tough one.
Well, young player of the season in England was Tom Pearson. He's a flanker, number 7.
London Irish boy.
I think he'll have a good shout, but we're pretty well stocked at 7. But the competition which he brings, and he's quite unique in his ability. Tom Curry's the incumbent, but he offers something slightly different, I think, from the rest. So, yeah, there's my shout.
Quick question, just from what you just mentioned with Owen. I totally agree with you, but who balances out? I think the modern game even more so, which has been in evidence over the last probably 6 to 12 months. Mm-hmm. Who's the power midfielder that you have to complement that? The ball playing, be it George or be it Owen Farrell. Who would you have to complement that aspect?
It's such a good conversation. It's been a conversation which I think we're getting a bit more clarity over. Manu Tuilangi, when he's been fit, had to have been selected until this year. We've gone for Ollie Lawrence, and he was voted Premiership Player of the Season. He's been incredible. He played 4 out of the 5 matches in the Six Nations, only didn't play 1 through injury, and has played really well. I think that's his jersey at the minute. And the gauntlet has been passed on to Manu to show what he can do. So I think it's Ollie Lawrence. I really do. But in terms of England's attack, we have the talent.
Yeah.
We have talent. We've got try scorers. We've got ball players. We've got crash, bang and wallop if that's what we need. The thing that needs to shift for me is just the mentality. If we can look to attack, you see South Africa in 2019, and you look at their foundations of the game, it's set piece, it's a great defence, and it's a brilliant kick tactical game. But in the last year, South Africa on average has scored 3 tries a game. To win this World Cup here in Paris, you're going to have to score at least 3 tries. The Rugby Worlds, and you look at the teams that are winning, Saracens were the second most amount of tries and second most amount of points in the domestic league. You look at La Rochelle taking on Leinster.
Yeah.
in terms of their numbers, what they do in attack. It feels like the movement is, which is really exciting for the fans.
Yeah.
Because I think this World Cup will see more tries
Scoring
than we've
tries.
ever seen.
Yeah.
Does that come down to officiating and the mindset of two teams? Because I always often think that, but then when it comes to these types of tournaments, it becomes a bit of balls in play less.
Yep.
What do you say, George? I mean, you've been there. Yeah.
And it's not so much what you've seen in the lead up to it. It's just, I don't know.
I do think in the last couple of years with World Rugby, we've seen a far greater sense of collaboration. I've been really fortunate to sit in some of those meetings, and people perhaps won't see the process to get to the points where we're seeing the type of game that we're seeing, but being sat in board meetings with every head coach from around the world, with every referee, with every stakeholder, and actively having these conversations. What type of game do we want to see? And everyone's like, more tries, more ball in play. Okay, cool. So that's what we want to achieve. That's the helicopter view of it. That then gives a framework to how referees want to referee it, right?
Yeah.
So if they know that's what they want, then hopefully what the players want, what the coaches want, is exactly in tandem with what the fans want. And I think we've seen green shoots of that. I think this year, right across the world, we're seeing all of the things. And statistically, we're seeing the ball in play a lot more. You go back to the Ireland-France game, which was 48 minutes ball in play, which is 6 minutes more on average.
What a game that was.
So I think the game at the moment is probably... And I know we've got our challenges, every sport does, but in terms of what we're just seeing on the pitch, probably not been in a better place through that sense of collaboration.
You agree with that?
Yeah, well, what you talk about those green shoots. The Six Nations was outstanding to watch. I thought all the teams turned up to play. Everyone's different. There's always a little bit of tactical nous and differential that you put into each game, but the mindset of everyone to play was really good. But I know there was a period where it was like you can't play between 22 and 22. You got to kick. You got to kick. You can do that. That's no problem. If that's what your choice is, and that's what your tactical sort of theories around the game. But I think the two teams in the Six Nations, France and Ireland, they play between the 22 and 22. They're prepared to ball keep and hang on to it. Fatigue. I think they beat France by making. I think the French made another 100 more tackles in that game. So. I love that, and if we can see more of that going forward, and don't be sort of bluffed into the old 3-card trick with the Springboks or the Bockies, whereby set piece strong, they win up front. I mean, they can move the ball, they can score 3+ tries. They've got some serious wheels on the edge, good midfield, really good decision makers around 9-10. So if they want to flip the switch and say we're playing today, and we can play across the field, yes we can, but we can also play through as well. So I like that, and I think. That's what rugby fans want to see.
Do you remember that recent game between the Barbars and World 15? Steve Hansen was coaching World 15, and Reece Patchell was on his social media saying, the one message was always, if you got the ball, the opposition hasn't, which sounds simple, but that's what you're alluding to, right? Maybe whoever's going to win this World Cup is going to have the ball more than the opposition, because that's the key element to it.
I think there's been this cycle where defence ruled attack, and that became the thing, that became the foundation or your route to success. And so we had teams that actually didn't want to have the ball because it felt like a liability by having it. Now teams are really appreciating it. And let's not forget, for anyone who's played at any level, the reason why you probably picked up the game was to have the ball in your hands. And then you have to understand the other elements like scrummaging and tackling and all the rest of it. But it all started with running with the ball. Yeah. And when we're seeing that at the highest level, then that's good for the game. Do you reckon you could still play?
No. I seriously look at people running.
You all, I'm not being funny, you all do decent shape on you lads. Still got it. You say you're 50, you're lying, we'll check that out.
No, that's 100%.
You can still do a job, couldn't you?
No, not at all.
Still have the chat on you when you're sledging.
No, I'd be like 5 metres behind every play. I'd be like, I loved him as a referee. This is really respectful. Chris White, he was a wonderful referee, but we used to joke, it was like, we've got to tell a referee story. And he wasn't like winning the beep test or whatever they call it now. No, he was probably going to miss the first 3 or 4 infringements at the breakdown. They turn up and like 10 guys had a crack at it, you've had a crack at it, I've had a crack at it, then the next person, he's blowing that up. So we just said before the game, Chris, just be consistent. The first 3 infringements are play on, and for the 4th one, that's what you officiate. But then he had good banter. You probably can't have a conversation like that with a referee. If I threw a poor pass or whatever and you're trying to tell him or give him some information about like maybe look towards the goal in terms of favouring us. He'd just tell me to focus on my pass and hit my 10, like all that kind of stuff. He says, don't worry, I'll get there on time, just you worry about your job. It was very, very funny.
Kev, could I ask a question to these two legends?
Is it, what is Etzebeth's nickname?
Let's not go back there now.
Okay, but maybe he was the person that we were talking about, but we've not got to that point. But I reckon everyone listening to this podcast or watching this, I'll start with you, Greeks, but what does it take to win a World Cup? Because everyone's it's individual. What was it for you and what was it for you?
It takes a lot of hard work. There's no doubting that. It just doesn't happen, planning, etc. But you need a big slice of luck. You need luck. There's no doubt about it. And we had luck in 99. Like, he kicked 2 field goals in his whole career, Stephen Larkham. We played with each other 79 times as a 9-10. He kicked 2 field goals. One of those was in 1999 in extra time in a semi-final against the Springboks at Twickenham. When he's looking, he wasn't even thinking. He just sort of played how he played and just knocked this thing over from 45 metres and was like, where did that come from? And so that was it was a big moment, big stage, big players leave, but it was luck. He 2 in his whole career, never did it.
Wow.
But we also had incredible self-belief. Like, I think what different, I know you talk about the storytelling within the team. I still remember the 99 World Cup team. Like, we're still great mates and we do things together, which is always good. We're obviously a lot older in the tooth, but when we catch up, it's just like we just got on the bus at Cardiff. We didn't really get on the bus. We sort of walked around Cardiff post-game, which is great. But that group, there's no way anyone's going to beat us that day. It's just not that's not an arrogant comment. It's just we'd gone through some tough times together. You don't always win. And that actually forges a lot of strength and resolve within the team. But there was no one who got onto that field who was part of that squad that you wouldn't want to be on the field representing not just this group of people, which is coaches, players, management, etc., but also your country and your family. So it does, like, that group was really special. And I think that's probably the core of a lot of World Cup winning teams. Yeah. Everyone goes about it differently, but yeah, you get to those moments and there's just no way you're going to get beaten. And that's not arrogance. It's just this incredible self-belief you have across everyone in your squad.
I think, for that 2019 team that I was part of, I think something that, that kind of separated us maybe from teams that I was previously part of. Then I played in 3 World Cups and I only won the 3rd one. And I think it was probably the buy-in into the common goal that we had as a squad. And I think that, the common goal was clear, and I think at the time, there was a whole lot of stuff going on back in South Africa, facing a lot of challenges, the economy not doing so well, there was, a huge increase in gender-based violence and, certain aspects of life that were just, horrific back home. And so, we kind of wanted to go on a journey of, giving people hope, and inspiring people. And Rassie was actually adamant, like at the beginning of the tournament, that we're not going to talk about it because, yes, we want to do it, but we're not going to talk about it. We're going to have to start understand what is this, what does this goal mean, and and how much of a burden that we're carrying and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve. So we don't want to start talking about it necessarily if we're not playing well, until every person understands that they've got a privilege, and they've got a privilege to play the game of rugby and follow their dream, as opposed to other people that are struggling to put food on the table and, just going through the journey of life, facing so much hardships. So it was like, you got to understand your role, on the field of play, and you execute, and only until then, that's when you can start talking about hope. So every guy in that team, started to focus more on their craft and really wanting to be the best version of themselves. If we did a play, it's like, everybody knowing their detail to the T and executing. And then only, when we got to probably the semi-final, that's when we started. Actually, we knew that it was there all along. And then in the semi-final, then we thought we actually deserved to speak about it because, we were playing, like people that were trying to inspire an entire nation. So I think for us, that was like a key thing, and every individual, every player, brought in their part. And in the end, we were able to kind of achieve the impossible. So I think for me, that was probably the significant thing about winning that World Cup.
What was the celebration like?
Oh, crazy. I think this was this cup, or a cup, right?
It's
Yeah.
Calling it a cup or
It's a
trophy?
cup, man. It's a
Bill,
cup.
you can call
What's-
it Bill.
William
Bill,
Bill,
yeah,
it's a
okay.
cup, yeah.
Bill had so much alcohol in him. I don't know if it's probably if they've all cleaned it up, because I think 100 Paula, Damien, the Islander, they all had a go. But it was amazing to get on the streets of South Africa and have millions of people celebrating. People of different races, different backgrounds, just coming together and looking past that and just celebrating how much this win meant to them. So, and obviously Sia being, the face of the team, being the captain, I think was a massive, massive, moment. And I think, something that will never be forgotten in history. Maybe there's probably going to be an Invictus too, based on 2019. You never know.
Yeah.
It meant so much to the whole of South Africa.
What does this mean to you?
This is like my blood, sweat, tears, hard work, all carved in gold. My disappointments, the many challenges that I faced, and the mornings that I had to wake up and train super hard and dig deep, and doing all that unseen work. It's everything, all that stuff, just kind of carved in gold. So where I
Does
look at it.
99 feel like it was that many years ago?
Yeah, it
or
doesn't
just-
actually. It's
just
funny.
listening
I think
to
it
the
does
Beast
funny,
talking about it,
Yeah, Beast talking about it. It just, a lot of the same adjectives, same feelings. First, it's a sense of relief when you win it. Like you can't believe it. You've had that as a goal, and then when you achieve it, it's like, well, we've actually done it. Then it sinks in. You get emotional, and so you should. And then you have a great time together, and you celebrate those moments. So that brings a lot of joy. But yeah, to me, it's definitely hard work. It's perseverance. I think the game of rugby brings a lot of joy, and it brings people together. And I think sport has an amazing ability to do that. And you can almost take yourself back to where you were at a sporting moment or something. Like we like our music, something it resonates with you in a certain way, and it certainly does that. Like it takes me back to those moments, which is great. And I think that is the beauty of the Rugby World Cup. And long may it continue, but more importantly, I can't wait to see who has the ability to answer that question in years to come after Rugby World Cup 2023.
Do you know what's nice, Gethin? Is that both of you answer that question just like locked in
I know it's
to it, and you can just see your eyes just light up.
Well, it's quite a unique club, isn't it? There's not many names on.
No, of course,
on the
but
trophy.
you're spot on with music. It can transport you back to a place and get you to feel how you were feeling in that moment. And whilst you're answering a question about something that is a life's work into this cup. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And so you're almost looking back on your rugby career in gold.
Yeah.
It's nice to see the joy. It's really nice.
Thank you.
What an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm going to let the lads enjoy a cold Asahi in the Parisian sun now with a beautiful backdrop behind us. We'll be back for loads more of this during the World Cup. It all kicks off in September, of course, so make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you very much. Cheers, lads.
Cheers.